Welcome, and it's my huge privilege to welcome back to our center, Venerable Tenzin Michael, who's been here quite a few times over the past year. And we are very fortunate to have such a teacher coming back on and on, guiding us, helping us. And we have a few people in the center, quite a few actually, just have a lovely dinner, and a few people online. And since tomorrow is this auspicious day of Lama Tsongkhapa Day, where we'll have a lot of events going on, I asked Venerable Tenzin Michael, what should we do on this lovely Saturday? And the suggestion was the three principal aspects of the path. And it's the text by Lama Tsongkhapa, one of the stalwarts of our tradition. So I will safely hand over the words to Venerable Tenzin Michael, and welcome.
So, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. And it's always a pleasure to be back in Switzerland, back at Lhagsam, and especially today. Yes, kind of a preparation for Lama Tsongkhapa Day tomorrow, so we can dwell into this. I think it's one of the most beautiful texts written by Lama Tsongkhapa. Very, very concise and very, very profound, very inspiring. And so I think we'll have about an hour, and then we have a short break, and maybe in the end we can have some question and answer. And so to start with, maybe it's always nice to calm the mind a little bit with maybe a short meditation. So we can maybe in the beginning just reflect a little bit how fortunate we are in this situation we have with this precious human body. I hope we all have good health. I mean, life in samsara is always some suffering. So our bodies are never perfectly healthy. There's always something. The elder you get, the more. But at least we can come here, or some people online. I hope you're in decent health, and also mentally we're capable to listen. We are capable to understand the Dharma, and most of all, we also have the interest to actually listen to teachings, or to think about the Dharma and to meditate about it, trying to bring some positive changes in our mind. And it's actually very rare if we see among humans how many people are actually interested in developing their mind. And most people are looking for happiness outside, where it cannot really be found. We can find some pleasure, some temporary pleasure, but the real happiness we have to cultivate within. And that's what the Dharma is helping us to do. The teachings of the Buddha and the great masters like Lama Tsongkhapa, who explained the teaching of the Buddha, and our own teachers who are still alive, like His Holiness Dalai Lama and other teachers, or like Lama Zopa, who just passed away. These teachers, if you had the fortune to meet them, they keep the teachings alive in their mind. They're living the teachings. And the one thing is the teachings we have in the text, like this text by Lama Tsongkhapa, and the other is to bring the teachings alive in our own mind. And like that, the Dharma stays alive in the world. So whenever we are studying and teaching, on listening and meditating on the text, we are actually keeping the Dharma alive in the world, in our minds. And if we have some understanding, we can share it with others and they pass it on to future generations. So we are so fortunate to have all these conditions. And on top of that, we're living in a peaceful country. We have enough food. Have all the conditions, so we can just meditate a little bit on rejoicing and appreciating what we have. So we can just take a comfortable posture, whether you sit on a cushion or on a chair. Have your spine upright, straight, so that the energy channels are not blocked. The energy can freely flow. You can keep your hands in your lap, the head straight, and you can have your eyes ideally slightly open, but not to look, just to keep some light coming in, and then just focus on the breathing for a while, and let the thoughts pass. Thoughts are the brain, the mind is always active, the thoughts coming and going. But if you don't attach any attention to them, they're just like clouds passing in the sky. They pop up in the mind and we just let them disappear, and we focus on the breathing. So we can do this for a little while, maybe a few minutes. And like this, our minds will calm. Our thoughts about what we've been doing and what we need to do next can disappear, and our mind is open and spacious and ready for the Dharma. And then when our mind has calmed down a little bit, then we can generate a good motivation, a good motivation for the next few hours for this teaching and listening to this text by Lama Tsongkhapa. So we can see that this amazing situation we are in, it's impermanent. We don't know what the future brings, but we can be sure there will be suffering coming. Sickness, old age, and death are part of life. And on top of that, these days, the world is in a bit of uproar. Politically, there's wars and there's environmental crisis. So the future is very uncertain. And it all depends on our karma, on our action, and also where we will be reborn in the next life. We don't know. And so we can generate the motivation to create the causes for happiness in future life, not to be reborn in a place of suffering, but in a place where we have the conditions to continue practice, to purify our mind, and to finally reach liberation and enlightenment. But then, since we are in the Mahayana tradition, we try to generate a bodhicitta motivation on top of that, that whatever we do, our Dharma practice is not just for our own well-being, but we try to cultivate the positive mind and eventually try to move on a path to enlightenment in order to benefit and help all sentient beings who are caught in the suffering of samsara. So we can generate a moment to think that what helps us on the path to enlightenment, to find real past lasting peace and happiness, is the teachings of the Buddha, which come from the Buddha's own experience. The Buddha himself, he gave up his worldly life, he gave up his wealth and palace and comfort in order to find the ultimate peace, which is beyond the worldly pleasures. And having found liberation and enlightenment, he shared his knowledge with the people around, with his students, and is passed down through the kindness of all the previous masters. One of them, Lama Tsongkhapa, who clarified it with his writings, with his teachings, and then it was further passed down with all the teachers and the lineages up to our present generation. And we are so fortunate we have still access to the knowledge and the teaching of the Buddha, these teachings which help us cultivate the positive states of mind and to transform our negative states of mind, the states of minds which are the causes of suffering, So then we can think about all the masters in the past, our own teachers. Maybe we can visualize our own teachers and their teachers and the lineage down to Lama Tsongkhapa and down to Buddha Shakyamuni. And we can visualize Buddha Shakyamuni in front of us, not as a statue, but as a living Buddha, and try to connect with what is a Buddha. A Buddha, we don't know. We only have the representations. But if you have encountered people like His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa, or some people might even have met Lama Yeshe, or there's many other great lamas, accomplished teachers, and they have, sometimes we can get the feeling when we are in the presence of His Holiness, like his kindness, his intention, his wisdom when he teaches. So these are the qualities of the Buddha, and we can feel it when we connect with some teacher and masters. So when we visualize the Buddha, we can try to generate a feeling for this incredible kindness and the wisdom and compassion they emanate. And if you have experienced something like that, you can bring this to your present mind and connect it with the Buddha and your teacher and teachers, and think that this is the qualities we like to develop ourselves, so we can become like these great masters, and we can inspire others by what we do and by what we are. So we can visualize this for a short moment and generate this aspiration to go to these states. And then with this motivation, we can take a refuge, and we can go to the Kopan prayer book on page 30. No, not page 30, sorry, page 48. Or maybe you have memorized the refuge prayers already. So we can do the refuge prayer and the four immeasurables, and with the motivation of generating a mind of refuge, which gives us the safe direction to go in the direction of the teachings of the Buddha, to live our life according to the teachings, and also the Bodhicitta motivation to do this for the benefit of all sentient beings, not just humans, but also all the animals and the whole world and everything which we connect with. Sangye chedang tsoki chonam la jangju pardo tani kyap suchi dagi jinso ki peso nam ki trola penjir sangye trupal sho. Sangye chedang tsoki chonam la jangju pardo tani kyap suchi dagi jinso ki peso nam ki trola penjir sangye trupal sho. Sangye chödam soki chonam la changju pardu takni kyap suchi taki jin soki personam ki trola penchir sangye trupar sho. So like that we go for refuge until we're enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. So we go for refuge to the enlightened qualities of the Buddhas. But these are also the qualities we can develop in ourselves. We have the potential for these qualities. So we also take refuge to our inner quality, to our inner Buddha nature, ultimately, so we can become like a Buddha for the benefit of others. So then we can also do the four immeasurables. We do them in English. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Maybe we can do the seven limb prayer as well, since we're here. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all the holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence. Turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment.
Six. Rotate.
Yes. So the root text is on page 76 in the same book. So then when we come to the text, so this text is very concise text, which basically comprises all the teachings of the Buddha in 14 verses. So please don't expect to understand everything. Basically, this text, when I was starting to study Dharma, I was thinking I like this short text because I thought they're easier to understand than all these big books. But then I realized actually these short texts are much more difficult to understand. They're not written for beginners. As a beginner, you should read the Lamrim Chemo, like all the 3 volumes, and not just that, but there's also the Lamrim Chemo is like the big, extensive Lamrim text which Lama Tsongkhapa wrote, where he goes into the details and he explains it. But then there's also commentaries on this text, like when in Nalanda Monastery we were studying the middle Lamrim, which is a little bit shorter, but not easier. And then we had the geshes explaining that text, and we did this for a whole year. And I don't think I've understood everything. And that was a whole year of full-time study. So now we have 3 hours and 14 verses. So of course, it will basically it gives you an overview over the whole teachings, and it's also a way to meditate on it. But in order to really understand this text, it's necessary to be familiar with extensive Lamrim. And the extensive Lamrim is also a concise version of all the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha. So the more we study, the more we understand the Lamrim, and the more we understand the Lamrim, the more we understand the 3 principles of the path. But I'm also maybe not the most qualified person to explain all the things, especially the third part where it goes about emptiness. This is very difficult. But what I can do is explain the verses like they've been explained to me by other teachers. So when you see this text and go through it, so you have an idea what each verse is all about. And like that, when we practice the Lamrim, it's good to, there's the different Lamrim topics. We can meditate on the topics individually, but it's also advised that once a day, for example, or when we do a Lamrim retreat, we meditating on a specific topic, but then once a day to go through the whole Lamrim, but just to get an overview. And for that, these short texts are very, very nice. And the more we have studied, the more when we read one of these verses, we remember the specific topics we have studied and meditated before. But for that, it's good to have a little bit an overview of the 3 principles of the path, what it is about, what the verses are about. But to go to the real details, it needs much more time and study. But it's a very inspiring text, and if we ever have the chance to get some deeper explanation on it, or there's also books like this one here, Tsongkhapa, the Three Principal Teachings of the Buddha. This is by Pabongka Rinpoche, is explanation booklet about these verses. And there's also, I think His Honest Dalai Lama give some explanations, and there's different explanations which go into this. So Tsongkhapa, he was one of the great masters of Buddhism in Tibet, and is also the founder of the Gelugpa tradition. Like when the teachings of the Buddha came from India to Tibet, there were different disseminations, and in the beginning was Guru Padmasambhava, which is the Nyingma tradition which is established, and then later with Milarepa slowly came the Kagyu tradition, and then there was the Sakya tradition as well. And Lama Tsongkhapa was much later, and he didn't create a new tradition. He just studied everything which was around, and to really understand it, and then out of that came the Gelugpa tradition, which is not separate. It just takes all the knowledge from all the other traditions which were there. And Lama Tsongkhapa was just a brilliant teacher and master, which had a lot of experience in learning, because he learned from there were no Gelugpa teachers at that time. But he studied at all the other schools. And then he really practiced, he meditated, and he even had like visions of Manjushri, who gave him teachings. And then he went into retreat and did a lot of practice to really understand the teachings from his own experience. And then he was teaching and writing these texts, and then he founded the Lhagsam Monastery, and like this slowly a tradition evolved from Lama Tsongkhapa and his students, Kedubche, Gyaltsabche, and many other students. And then first it was Lhagsam Monastery, then Seran, Drepung Monastery, and the different monasteries came about. And then later the tradition of the Dalai Lama, and like that the Gelugpa tradition became very strong. But it all started with Lama Tsongkhapa and his practice and knowledge. And he wrote more than 10,000 pages of very eloquent teachings of sutra and also tantra. And he also wrote several Lamrim texts. And the Lamrim started with Lama Atisha, when he was invited from India. He was one of the greatest masters in India, and was invited by King Yeshe, because the Dharma was established in Tibet, but then there was some degeneration. And then Lama Atisha was invited to clarify and revive the pure Dharma again. And what Lama Atisha did, he had the knowledge of all the different teachings of the Buddha. And because the Tibetans that time didn't have such a great understanding, he wrote this very concise text about was the first Lamrim text called the Light of the Path, where he brought all the teachings of the Buddha together, and the text actually explained the sequence, how these texts relate to each other. And that was the first Lamrim text. And on that base, then many other Lamrims came about. It's not only Lama Tsongkhapa, there are many other masters who wrote similar texts, and some are very extensive, like the Lamrim Chemo by Lama Tsongkhapa is big, like in big volumes. Then there's the middle Lamrim, and then there's many short Lamrim texts, which are, and some are more for study, some are really texts to meditate on the Lamrim, depending And then we have this our text, the three principal aspects of the path. And here Lama Tsongkhapa, he compiled the text in three main sections, which are three main practices on the path. And the first is renunciation. So if you want to practice Dharma, we need renunciation, which is renunciation sometimes is a bit misunderstood. When we hear about renunciation, we believe it's about renouncing the pleasures, renouncing the good things in life. But actually, what we renounce is suffering. If we have to understand what is the causes of suffering and what is the causes of peace, of happiness, and we don't renounce happiness. Actually, we want to achieve happiness, but certain things which only give us short-term pleasure, but in the long term are causes for suffering, this is the things we renounce. So renouncing worldly pleasures. Uh, Sometimes we talk about the eight worldly dharmas, like material things, fame, sense pleasures, for a deeper sense of peace and harmony, peace of mind, and not just in this life, but especially for future lives. So this is the basis for the Dharma practice. So this is the first section Lama Tsongkhapa talks about, and then comes the Bodhicitta motivation. That with renunciation we have the aspiration to find our own liberation, our own peace of mind, like freedom from samsara. But then comes the Bodhisattva motivation, the Mahayana path, where we don't do this only for our own benefit. We see that the other sentient beings are suffering as well, so we want to liberate all of them. So then comes the Bodhicitta motivation. And so Lama Tsongkhapa has a few verses dedicated to Bodhicitta. And then the third part in this short text is about the right view, the view of emptiness. And here Lama Tsongkhapa approaches emptiness from the view of interdependence, which is very, very interesting, very nice. So these are the three main parts of the text. And before these three, there's some introduction. And in the end is one verse about practice, some advice for practice. So this is already good to know whenever you read this text, that you know which verse belongs to which topic. That this verse, like the third to the fifth verse, is about renunciation. The sixth to the eighth verse is about bodhicitta. The ninth to 13th verse is about emptiness. And the 14th is about practice. And to start with, there's two verses of introduction. So this is just the overview. So we can look at the text now. And it starts with, I hope I have the same text. Yes. There's some titles here which are not the original text. They're put here in the book for explanation. When it says expressing of homage, this is put later for clarification. So this is good to know. So this is expressing of homage, where Lama Tsongkhapa says, maybe before I before we start, what's also interesting to know how this text came about. So Lama Tsongkhapa, he composed this text for one of his main disciples. His name is Ngamang Drakpa. And he's not so well known. He's not one of his famous disciples, but it seems it was one of his very close disciples. And somewhere in one text he calls him my son. So it means, or maybe it's even somewhere in the back of the text he says my son. So it means he was very close disciple. But he went somewhere else. He lived in a different place, and he was teaching Dharma there. And he was not with his teacher Lama Tsongkhapa, but then he requested Lama Tsongkhapa for some advice, some text to practice. And then Lama Tsongkhapa, he composed this text in writing and sent it to his disciple Ngamang Drakpa, and that's how it came about. And so the text starts with homage, where it says, "I bow down to my perfect gurus." So here Lama Tsongkhapa, he's already, like in the text, usually there's always some homage. Sometimes it's homage to Manjushri when it's a text about emptiness, or homage to Chenresik when it's more about compassion. And here it's homage to the guru, which shows that like in other Lamrim texts, it says like the root of the path is a teacher. That without the teacher, the teachings of the Buddha are not accessible for us, because the Buddha passed away 2,500 years ago. But the connection with the Buddha we get through our teachers, especially if they're teachers who have realized the teachings of the Buddha in their own minds. And then the teacher is just like the Buddha. Like there's no difference if we receive teachings from our teachers than when we receive it from the Buddha himself. Like when we receive teachings from the Dalai Lama, we can see the Dalai Lama as a Buddha. And the teachings we receive, the more we can see the Lama as a Buddha, the more the Lama can give us inspiration as the Buddha did. Because even at the time of the Buddha, if some people didn't respect the Buddha, and they probably wouldn't really receive much. And so it always depends on how we see the teachers. And so it puts the importance of the teacher, because especially nowadays, the teachings are widely available. We're so fortunate. We have it in our own language, in German, in English, in French, it's translated. It's all online these days. There's YouTube teachings and so much. But all of this, like the texts, they only come to life when we understand them, when we're able to correctly understand them. And especially like these concise texts, they're not always easy to understand. So it's good to have a teacher with the knowledge and the experience who can really open the text for us in our heart. And like that we have the teaching of the Buddha can manifest in our own mind. And then it's not only the intellectual understanding of the text, and of course it always says listening, contemplation, and meditation. So first we listen to teaching, we hear the teachings, or we read the teachings. And then contemplation is more analytically thinking about it, familiarizing with the text, understanding it, and also trying to make sense. And we can also ask critical questions when the text doesn't make sense, it's not logical. Then, especially if we have a teacher, we can ask, but it doesn't make sense to me. And in a respectful way, of course. with a motivation to make sense, to understand. And then through contemplation, at some point it opens up our mind, and we get some understanding, which is still on a intellectual level. But then once we have this intellectual knowledge and understanding and correct knowledge, hopefully, and we're familiar with it, then we can meditate about it and make it part of our mind, so that the teachings are not just from intellectual level, they become part of us, and we embody the teaching, especially like teachings about bodhicitta, compassion. Then compassion has to be part of our mind. It's not enough to know intellectually what compassion is and having the right definition for compassion. And same with wisdom, the right view, the view how things exist, the view about interdependence has to become part of our mind. And for that, of course, then we have the meditation. So it's always all three. So then we come to the first verse, which is the introduction. As the first and second verse is the introduction, which here it says, promise to compose. So that's when Lama Tsongkhapa, he composed this text for his student Ngawang Drapa somewhere in eastern Tibet. So here it says, the essential meaning of the victorious one's teachings, the path praised by all the holy victors and their children, the gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation. These I shall try to explain as much as I can. So here we can see Lama Tsongkhapa is very humble. He was one of the greatest masters of his time, but he says, I explain as much as I can. So it's very humble. And so it's the essential meaning of the victorious ones. So the victorious ones, this is another word for the Buddhas, so the Buddha's teachings, and it's the essential meaning. So it's the most concise of all the teachings, which is renunciation, bodhicitta, and the view of emptiness. The path praised by all the holy victors and their children. So it's the path to enlightenment, which is praised by the holy victors, are the Buddhas, and their children. This is means the bodhisattvas. And the gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation. So this also shows not everyone is desiring liberation. They're the unfortunate ones who are not even desiring liberation. So we can see we are among the fortunate ones. We have a desire for liberation. And while even among humans, not everyone is desiring liberation. And then when we think about other realms, like the animal realms and even the God realms and the hell realm especially, these beings, they have not the capacity of mind, and so they're suffering, but they don't have desire for liberation. So we can be very fortunate that we are the fortunate ones. And then so Lama Tsongkhapa, he tries to explain as much as he can. So for also us, it's good to try to understand as much as we can. Then second, it says, persuading to listen. Those who are not attached to the pleasures of cycling, samsara, who strive to make freedom and endowments meaningful, who entrust themselves to the path pleasing the victorious ones, you fortunate ones, listen with a calm mind. So it says cycling. Cycling is samsara. It says in brackets samsara. I guess cycling is more precise translation of the Tibetan, which means actually means cycling. But when we hear cycling, I almost think about bicycling. So actually, I prefer to just say the pleasures of samsara, since samsara, we know what it means. So then we have to ask ourselves, are we attached to the pleasures of samsara? And so these are the fortunate ones, those who are not attached to the pleasures of samsara, those who strive to make freedom and endowments meaningful. So freedom and endowments, if you're familiar with the Lamrim, there's a different Lamrim topics. And the first topic usually is sometimes it starts with Guru devotion, which is not actually the first topic. It's usually put on the top, just like here Lama Tsongkhapa says, I bow down to the perfect Guru, because most the Lamrim texts, they're seen as a preliminary for tantric practice. And in Tantra, the Guru is most important, to see the Guru as a Buddha. And because to make this already clear, in most Lamrim texts, it starts with Guru devotion. But actual Guru devotion is really explained a little bit later. But then the first real Lamrim topics is freedom and endowment, which is about our precious human rebirth, which is a rebirth in a place where we are free, we have the freedom to practice Dharma. We have not too much suffering, like in some animals, they have so much suffering, and especially the hell realms and the hungry ghosts. There's so much suffering. There's not much freedom to practice Dharma. But also, we are not like in the God realm where there's no suffering, where there's no intent to overcome suffering, because everything is just peace and nice. So we are in the best place to practice Dharma here with the human realm, with our human body and human mind. So this is something we have to be aware of, and also see how rare it is to have this freedom and endowment. Even among humans, it's rare. Some poor people, in poorer countries, they just have to work all day just to survive. Some very rich people and famous ones, or whatever, powerful politicians, they probably don't have much time to practice Dharma either, because they have to look after their money and their responsibilities. So we are very fortunate. And then, so we have this freedom and endowments, and we have to make it meaningful. That means we should use this human life with all and our connection with the Dharma, in order to make it meaningful. Means meaningful for future lives, to actually put it into practice. Who entrust themselves to the path, pleasing the victorious ones. So we take refuge. That means we entrust ourselves to the path pleasing the Buddhas, the path leading to enlightenment. And then he says, you fortunate ones, listen with a calm mind. So that's also in the extensive Lamrim text. It talks about the three vessels, like we should listen with a mind which is not distracted, which is also not polluted, not like a polluted vessel. Like if we listen to the teachings in order to find faults with the teachings, or in order to criticize the teachings, or not with a mind to understand, and also not to be, when we listen and understand it, but if we forget it immediately, it's also not useful. So we have to generate the right motivation, the intention, wanting to understand, wanting to remember it, and wanting to understand it the right way, and with the right motivation. So I don't know if there's any questions specifically to a topic which are just like short things which are not clear, you can ask. But if there's maybe other questions which need a bit more explanation, we can have some question answer in the end. But if so far there's anything which is not clear, just let me know. Because then we go to the first actual topic, which starts renunciation from verse 3. Without the complete intention, definitely to be free from circling, there is no way to pacify attachment seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling. Also, by craving for cyclic existence, embodied beings are continuously bound. Therefore, at the very beginning, seek renunciation. So, this is not so difficult. So the intention to definitely be free from samsara. So we have to have the motivation to be free from samsara. So we don't listen to the teachings to find pleasures within samsara. There's different motivations we can have. And some people, they meet the Dharma, they do a bit of meditation to have a bit more peace of mind, just to be more peaceful, more enjoyable, or more maybe you can work better with a calm mind. So that's okay. That's no fault, and it's might be very useful to do some meditation to go better through the difficulties of this life. But this is not the ultimate goal. But still, there's nothing wrong with. But as a real practitioner, our goal should be not just the benefits in this life, but at least the benefits of future life, or even better, the liberation from samsara altogether. So this is the renunciation, that we renounce this life, which means the pleasures which are limited to this life. We want to have real happiness, which is beyond this life. And because as long as we want happiness in this life, it says there's no way to pacify attachment seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of samsara. So, yeah, here it talks about the pleasurable effects. Means going after sense pleasures, which give us some satisfaction, and we don't want to have suffering experiences. We want to be comfortable, but there's no end to it, and it's still within samsara. And by craving for cyclic existence, embodied beings are continuously bound. So it's this attachment to the pleasures of samsara which keep us caught in samsara. So we have to see that as long as we are within samsara, we will always encounter suffering. And if we really want to be free from suffering, we have to find liberation from samsara. So this is the lower scope motivation, to find the personal freedom from samsara. So now here we're not talking about the bodhisattva motivation for all sentient beings, because in order to have this motivation to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, first we have to create this for ourselves. If we ourselves think, it's actually quite comfortable here, I don't mind, it's like here in Switzerland, and especially when the weather is nice, the food is good, then things are fine. And there's not so much, and if I meditate a bit, I'm even more peaceful. But that pleasure, sooner or later, we will face sickness, aging, and death, and this is suffering. It will be suffering, and it's unavoidable. And then we have to make sure we get a good rebirth in next life. And even there, if we don't practice Dharma, we'll again meet with suffering. So eventually, renunciation is about renouncing the whole of samsara, because we see as long as we're in samsara, there's always suffering, more or less, wherever in samsara. So renunciation is to aspire for this piece of nirvana. And nirvana is not a place, it's a state of mind. So that's good to know. It's not like, I don't know, if we grow up in a Christian tradition, we think there's heaven, it's a place, and then you're there and everything is fine. Nirvana is not a physical place. Like if somebody is, even the Buddha, when after his enlightenment, he still had his body, he was still in the world, so he was in nirvana, but he was still among people. So if someone reaches liberation or nirvana or even enlightenment, is not necessarily in a different place. But then after death, of course, there's different realms, and it's not limited to this world either. So that's good to know. Then verse 4, how to generate renunciation. Freedom and endowments are difficult to find, and life has no time to spare. By gaining familiarity with this, attraction to the appearance of this life is reversed. So this is basically what I was just explaining, the attraction for this life, that our main attention is for the pleasures of this life, we will be attracted to it and caught in it. And at the time of death, if we have this mind of desiring for the pleasures of this life, then it will be difficult to find a good rebirth by this craving and holding on. And also, again, how the freedom and endowment which we have now is difficult to find, how rare it is in the different realms to find a place like this where we meet, especially a place where the Dharma is alive. And when we look at the world, all these millions of years, the Buddha came to this planet 2,500 years, and we are here right now when the teachings of Buddha are still alive. And we don't know now, it's degenerating, and then there will be a time where even if you have a human rebirth, there might not be Dharma around, or in different parts of the world, even today, it's difficult to meet the Dharma. So they're difficult to find, and there's no time to spare. So we don't know when. There's like about impermanence and death. We don't know how long we live. We don't know how long our mind is properly functioning. We can have some disease and or suffering, sickness, and we don't know when we die. It could be tomorrow. So it's always good to remember not to postpone the Dharma and think, oh, I do this and that before, and then when I have time, I practice Dharma. That time might never come. So it's always good to do it now. Of course, you cannot, unless you're a monk, you cannot spend the whole day, but at least have some daily practice, like some continuation. And and try to make the Dharma practice one with your daily life. I mean, there's many things, even when we work or when we have a family, we can always have the right Dharma motivation, and the real practice is in daily life when difficulties come, not to get angry with your colleagues at work or with your family members who don't do what you like them to do, or there's always something, and then we can try to practice compassion, having a calm mind, try to find solutions for problems without getting angry. So that's the practice we can always do. I mean, we can, or at least we should try. Yeah, and gaining familiarity with impermanence, like meditating on. If in the morning when we wake up, we meditate on the impermanence, think I could die today. Our day might be different. We might like to say sorry if we did a mistake because we don't know. Tomorrow that person might be dead, I might be dead, and or we might not be able. We might die with regret. Um, so like this, when thinking about impermanence and so on, attraction to the appearances of this life is reversed. So what's the point of being too attached to my possessions if I die tomorrow? So this is very useful too. But this itself is a topic we can meditate on for days and weeks. And sometimes it's good to devote some time to one topic, but always to see it in a context with the whole Lamrim. By thinking over and over again that actions and their effects are unbetraying, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence, attraction to the appearance of future life is reversed. So here these two verses, like here number 4 is actually two verses. So the first one is reverse attachment to this life, and the second one is reverse attachment to future lives. So that's already one step more. Once we wish for a precious or good rebirth in future life, we can see that even there, just to have a good rebirth in future life is not enough, because even there we're facing the same problems of dying and suffering. And so the actual goal is to get out of samsara altogether, not just to be reborn in a place with more pleasures. Especially otherwise we might end up in the god realms where there's no suffering, but also not so much motivation to practice dharma, because we don't the suffering is not there. But even there, eventually death will come, and then we might fall to lower realms again. So, and then here where it says actions and their effects are unbetraying. So here it talks about karma and the karmic results. So that wherever we are reborn, it always depends on the karma we create now. So right now we create the karma for future lives. And whatever happens in the future or depends on our previous karma. Whatever happens now, even the good fortune we have now is also due to our karma. So right now we have to create the karmic conditions to be able to have a good future where we can practice Dharma in order to continue on the path. And repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence. So to be aware of the suffering, the three types of suffering. There's like suffering of suffering, suffering of change. But here it's mainly the pervasive compounded suffering or something like that, which means that wherever we are born in samsara, we're just having a body which is which comes from like a samsaric body. We always meet with suffering. So this is the most subtle types of suffering which we have to be aware that, yeah, there's the body is kind of contaminated with suffering, and we can have some relief from suffering, but it's our bodies, whatever in some samsara, is in the nature of suffering. So therefore, we have to get out of samsara altogether. And then it says, attraction to the appearances of future lives is reversed. So even good future life has no meaning. So we want to get out of samsara. So this is the renunciation. And then next verse, the definition of having generated renunciation. So how we know when we actually have achieved a state of renunciation. When, by having trained in this way, there's no arising, even for a second, of attraction to the perfections of cyclic existence, and day and night the intention seeking liberation arises, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. So when we practice, we have to make effort to, because normally we're attracted to the good food and the pleasurable sensations, to nice sights, comfortable things, and so that's natural. But attraction for liberation, that's something we have to generate. We have to make effort. But at some point, when we're through contemplation and listening, contemplation, and meditation, at one point we are so familiar with these thoughts that it just naturally, day and night, we have this thought of renunciation when it becomes part of us. Then it says, yeah, we train in this way, and then not even for a moment the attraction for this life appear, and constantly we have this mind wanting to get out of samsara. Lama Zopa says something is like, if you're in a burning house, you just want to get out. You don't think, or when you fall in a septic tank, it's dirty and smelly, and you just want to get out. And that when you have this motivation of samsara, we just want to get out. Then we have generated renunciation, and with renunciation also one enters the Hinayana path, because then that's when with this thought one enters the path of the arhats, the Hinayana path. But actually we don't want to go on the Hinayana path to have only our own personal liberation. Hello, welcome. We want to achieve full enlightenment, and for that we also need to combine the renunciation with the bodhicitta motivation. So that's when we come to the second part of the text, where it's about the motivation, bodhicitta. So far, everything fine? Yes?
Question. You said about the deprivation causes with suffering, which is the experience of having a samsaric body. What about samsaric mind with respect to, I know mind, maybe, but it's only the body?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the mind, there's different parts of mind, I would say. Yeah, I think it's also the mind. Yeah, I think it includes the mind. I mean, body and mind, they're not really separate. But I think, yeah, when I say body, it includes the mind, but or those parts of mind which are not pure.
Not the
Yeah, the gross mind, especially the mind which is with the delusions and the delusions which are basically the cause for our being caught in samsara. Yes.
because the body per se, it's the, has the signals, but doesn't generate the lust or the attachments or so on, that comes from the mind.
Yes, yes, yes. And also the suffering. I mean, we talk about the suffering of the body, but anyway, it's experienced in the mind. Yes, yes. So in that sense, when I say body, I mean the kind of body and mind which we have as a samsaric being. Yes, but then of course there's that part of mind which is pure and goes on until enlightenment. Yes. Um, so then, bodhicitta. So when we have renunciation and a realization of emptiness, that these two become the cause to for an arhat to achieve arhatship and being uh, liberation from samsara, the individual liberation. And to become a Buddha, we need bodhicitta and the wisdom, the emptiness. So these two, they become the causes for full enlightenment. So that's as a Mahayana practitioner, that's what we aspire. So that's for the bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, what is called also. That's very important. So then, verse 6, it says, even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, it does not become the cause of the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So, yes, so even if renunciation has been developed, it needs to be combined with the mind of enlightenment. So, the mind of enlightenment is the motivation to get enlightened for the benefit of others. So it's we meditate on the kindness of others, that and how all sentient beings have been our mothers, and seeing the kindness, generating love, generating compassion. And from that, when we see the suffering of sentient beings, we've seen they're just like us, just like I want to be happy, they want to be happy. And seeing the suffering becomes so unbearable that we really think like, I want to free them from suffering. But then we have to be realistic, and we can see I'm not able to benefit all sentient beings. I cannot just stop the suffering in even now when we look at the news and see the suffering in places of war, the suffering in Gaza, the suffering of people, of animals, and what's going on in the world. We don't have the capacity right now to help all of these sentient beings. And then we see only a Buddha has the means to benefit sentient beings ultimately. And so if we really want to lead others out of samsara, we have to get a state of enlightenment, having the wisdom and the compassion of the Buddha, the compassion to really benefit for others more than ourselves, and the wisdom of really knowing how to do, to really how to help people. Sometimes people are suffering and we try to help them, but we just, they don't even listen. We cannot, and we don't really understand what the causes is, and we don't know what's the right advice to give. But when we have the mind of a Buddha, the omniscient mind of a Buddha, we know exactly what to say. Like sometimes it's amazing in the sutras, the Buddha says something which seems contradictory, but for that person is exactly what the person needed to understand and find a way to enlightenment. So that's what we need. But for that we have to get enlightened ourselves first. So we want to help right now, but we actually have to practice and follow the path. But we have this aspiration to get enlightened, not just for our own benefit, but to have the capacity to benefit others in the greatest way. This is the Bodhisattva motivation. So, yes, and then I guess you're familiar with, I mean, there's all these meditations on bodhicitta, like there's the different methods. Yes. Okay. Yes, yes. So, yes, so this was the purpose of generating the mind of enlightenment. And now it's the next two verses, how to generate the mind of enlightenment. So verse 7, it says, swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance. I think this verse, they go together, so I think we should read them together. Endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers are in such a condition, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Yeah, so 7 and 8, they go together. So here we meditate on the suffering of sentient beings. And then seeing the suffering of sentient beings, we generate the wish to help them, to lead them out of suffering. Was swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. So the four powerful rivers, this is a way to describe the sickness, the four main sickness, like birth, sickness, aging, and death, like the types of suffering we have in our life. Whenever we are born with a body, the suffering of birth, then we sooner or later we will meet some sickness. If we're lucky, just the flu. If we're unlucky, we might get some deadly disease or some sickness, which are really lots of suffering. Then aging is unavoidable. Even we might try to stay young, but eventually we get old. There's no chance. And getting old is also some involves some suffering, especially when we go closer to death, and then death itself is another. So these are the four powerful rivers were swept by the current of the four powerful. This is just when we're born. This is the current of life we go through. We cannot. We can try to swim against the stream a little bit and stay a bit fit and healthy and young, but eventually we will be carried towards death. And it's not just for ourselves, but we're thinking about sentient beings in samsara. tied by the tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo. So here we can reflect about the karma that all sentient beings, depending on the karma they've created, they will have to endure the results, and most of the karma is probably non-virtuous unless we are really practicing Dharma and being mindful and trying to work with our mind. If we naturally follow our desires and our anger, we'll create negative karma, small or big, continuously. And this karma sooner or later will give its results, which will be suffering. And like that, we're stuck in samsara. And all sentient beings like that. And to see this creates a lot of it's a suffering, but when we see it, it can generate some compassion for all those when we see the suffering. Caught in the iron net of self-grasping. So here, self-grasping is, we think about ourself, the self-grasping. This is the root of the problem, that we think we are a separate identity, and we see ourselves as me, mine, and my happiness is more important than other happiness, and all these selfish attitudes, which are very natural. We think it's normal, but it is the cause of all our problems, especially when we see the problems in the world, the problems in relationship, and so on. It's mostly due to self-grasping, thinking about oneself, that I'm more important than others, and my happiness is more important than others' happiness. And then, of course, that creates conflicts. And this grasping at the self, especially at the inherently existing self, is the root of all the suffering in samsara. That's why it's called the iron net of self-grasping. As long as we're caught in that idea of a self and hold on to this self, all the other wrong views and delusions come from that. And all sentient beings in samsara, they're like that. And then it's completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance. So this is the ignorance. When I talk about ignorance in a Buddhist sense, it's the ignorance of this self-grasping, the ignorance of not seeing how things exist in independence, seeing things as independent and self-existing, especially oneself, that I'm an independent entity, and therefore I have to protect myself from the others, and all the problems come like that. The Buddha, he spoke about the causes of suffering, like in the Four Noble Truths. There's the first noble truth of suffering, which we talked about, this samsara, all the different types of suffering, like the four: birth, sickness, aging, death, and so on, and the three types of suffering: suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and pervasive compounded suffering. And then the causes of suffering. So when we see the suffering, we want to get rid of the suffering, we have to look at the causes. If we don't know the causes of suffering, then it's difficult to be free of suffering. And then the Buddha mentioned that the causes of suffering are attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So attachment to pleasures and comfort and so on, aversion to everything which we don't like, and all this aversion and attachment comes from grasping at an inherently existing self. So this is when we here it says enveloped in the total darkness of ignorance. This is the ignorance of not seeing things as they are, seeing things as independent, existing by its own self, and especially the I, the self, the person, ourself. And from that, the other problems come. Endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings. And then we can see that all sentient beings, they're in this cycle, and because of the ignorance, the other delusions come, and because of the other delusions, we create actions which create negative karma, which again throws us into a difficult situation. And like that, samsara is going on and on. And then thinking that all mothers are in such a condition. And then all mothers, here we reflect that all sentient beings have been our mothers, because we've been born in samsara since beginningless time. And most of the time we had a mother. And then we think about the kindness of the mothers. We can think about the kindness of our own mother, how kind she was giving birth to us, caring for us, feeding us, protecting us, keeping us warm, keeping us clean, teaching us how to eat, how to walk, how to speak, and worrying about us even until we're grown up. They always want our best, and sometimes the mothers even protect us at the cost of their life. Especially, yeah, there's examples in mothers don't hesitate to save children's life and die. Also with animals, sometimes we can see that animals, maybe birds or whatever, to protect their little ones, they would even attack an animal which is much bigger and might kill them. And this kindness, all sentient beings, when they've been our mothers, they have shown us this kindness. So in order to generate bodhicitta, we meditate on the kindness of the mothers. And we can take our own mother if we have a good connection with our mother. Otherwise, we can try to generate this positive thought about our mother, and not to see the faults of our mother, but what she actually did. Even our mothers are also not perfect. They're also samsaric beings, but they did their best. Or we can also meditate about the ideal mother, and we had these mothers in all their lives, and we don't know who has been our mother in our past life. Even an insect or an animal or a person which is annoying to us might have been our mother, and the most compassionate and kind person in our last life. So to see beings as our mothers is one of the foundations to generate the compassion and the wish to repaying the kindness, and then love and compassion, and the wish to get for ourselves to become liberated and achieve enlightenment, so then we can free them from their suffering. Because these sentient beings which have been our mothers, they may not have met the Dharma, they don't know how to cultivate a positive mind, they generate the negative karma, and we can think that they're falling to the lower realms. They're like we're at the edge of a cliff, and there is our mother. She's old and blind, and she's walking toward the cliff and about to fall down. It will be very, very very bad not to take her by the hand and say like, oh, my mother, please go this way, this is the safe way. And like that, all these sentient beings in samsara, they've been so kind to us, but they haven't met the Dharma, they don't know how to cultivate their mind, and they create all this negative karma which throws them to the lower realms. And if because we have met the Dharma, we have a chance to cultivate a positive mind and go towards liberation, if we don't help them to find the right way, how can we not repay the kindness they showed us? So with these steps on the meditation for bodhicitta, like they're explained by Atisha, there's this 7 cause and effect meditation, and there's also the other meditation on Tonglen. So with these meditations, we can generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. That means the wish for ourselves to think like, I need to get enlightened, that from that I can have the capacity to really help those sentient beings not to fall to the lower realms, not to experience suffering anymore. And then the definition of having generated the mind of enlightenment. In short, if like the mother whose cherished son has fallen into a pit of fire, and who experiences even 1 second of his suffering as an unbearable eternity, your reflection on the suffering of all mother sentient beings has made it impossible for you to bear the suffering of even 1 second, and the wish seeking enlightenment for their sake arises without effort. Then you have realized the supreme precious mind of enlightenment. So, yeah, we do these meditations, we learn about bodhicitta, we contemplate about it, we see the benefit, and then we meditate on bodhicitta, and more we familiarize our mind with the bodhicitta meditation. And then when it becomes spontaneously, without having to go through all the analytical steps, we just day and night, this mind of enlightenment, the wish to get enlightened in order to be able to really benefit others. If this is there day and night without effort, then we have generated the mind of enlightenment. And that, when we generate the mind of enlightenment, we become a bodhisattva. And that's also the entry pass to the entry gate to the Mahayana path. Then we're actually, like we say, oh, I'm a Mahayana practitioner. But if we haven't really developed bodhicitta, we're not actually on the Mahayana path. We can say we're Mahayana practitioners because we aspire to be Mahayana practitioners, but we can generate this motivation with effort, and we have maybe moments where we think, oh yes, that's what I want to do. But then in daily life, it might be far away again. But for a bodhisattva, this is always there, always present. And we can feel it, like for me, when I met His Holiness Dalai Lama, there was a strong feeling of compassion. And I think even people who are maybe not Buddhist, they can feel this constant concern for the welfare of others. When in the presence of His Holiness, you can feel that it feels like you're the most important person for him, even though I'm just one of billions of people. But it feels like he's just there for me, and I think he is. Like everyone is most precious, and he will do everything he can. And it's a very vast mind. And yeah, here it says, just like a mother, when the most cherished child has fallen into the fire, she wouldn't hesitate to even a second to catch him out. And that's the attitude we should have to all sentient beings. And the fire is like, yes, sentient beings have fallen into samsara, and we want to free them. And for that, your reflection on suffering of all mother sentient beings has made it impossible for you to bear their suffering for even 1 second. So the more we reflect about the suffering, so sometimes it's good to, when we hear about suffering in the world, we can think about it and feel the pain and think that dissentient beings who are suffering here, whether it's I don't know, a war or another tornado or a flood or a drought or a fire or whatever happens, we can think about the sentient beings as our mothers and the wish to free them. And yes, for a bodhisattva, this comes naturally. It doesn't have to make effort. For us, we have to meditate on bodhicitta, and then we have maybe, if we do the meditation well, we can maybe feel a little bit how our mind expands a little bit, and then it's good to keep this a little bit and try to remember it and try to cultivate it again, and eventually with practice it becomes more and more spontaneous. So now next one is emptiness. So maybe we can have a short break now, like 15 minutes. And then we can go to the last part about emptiness, and then maybe have some questions. And maybe it's good when we have the break not to make it too worldly. Like it's nice to have a break, have a rest, and maybe drink a cup of tea or something. And also, it's also nice to discuss things, but it's good if we keep the conversations to the topic, so that we're not getting out of the mind of Dharma. And then afterwards, when it's finished, we can maybe also have, if you would like, you can stay a bit longer and we can have a cup of tea and talk about other things and connect. But now, to keep it a little bit, stay in the motivation, but it's also nice to share about this, and maybe share and discuss about the topic during the break, if you like. And then we come back here at before around 3. Okay, thank you. So, okay, welcome back. Yes, so we had renunciation and bodhicitta, and now comes the really interesting part, or well, it's all interesting, but this is the interesting in a sense that Lama Tsongkhapa, he's really his explanation of emptiness is very, very eloquent, very precise, and especially how he approaches the topic in this text, I feel is a little bit different, because he's approaching it from the side of interdependence. Like often, emptiness is approached from focusing on the empty nature of things, but here Lama Tsongkhapa, he's approaching it from the interdependence side, which I found very very interesting. So we're on verse number 9. The reason to meditate on the right view. Without the wisdom realizing ultimate reality, even though you have generated renunciation and a mind of enlightenment, you cannot cut the root cause of cycling. Therefore, attempt the methods to realize dependent arising. So here is quite clear. So we went through renunciation and bodhicitta. And Lama Tsongkhapa says, even though you have generated renunciation and you have generated the mind of enlightenment, without the wisdom realizing ultimate reality, you cannot cut the root cause of samsara. So what is the root cause of samsara? So it's the wrong views, the wrong views means sometimes just called ignorance, but it's not just ignorance of not knowing things. It's actually a wrong seeing things in a wrong way. So it's this wrong view because everything comes from the mind, and the way we see things that creates our whole worldview, and from that we act, and other things come about. Or all the other delusions, means all the negative aspects of mind, come from this one wrong view. And if we can cut that, the other ones are also disappear. Sometimes it's compared to like a tree. If you cut some branches of the tree, it keeps growing. But if you cut the tree from the root, then it will not grow again. So it's same with the delusions. We can maybe try to control our anger or our desire or our greed or whatever delusions we have, but they will always come back. But once we get rid of the underlying wrong attitude, wrong view, which is basically the view of thinking about an independent self, a self which exists from its own side, means a self which is not related to anything else. We think it's just there, it's me, and spontaneously this notion of self is just there. You think like me, I, and but actually it's a wrong view. The I is just depending on the body and the mind, and it's not an independent entity. And from this wrong view comes the actions which want to protect this wrong view, this wrong I, and then comes anger if it's challenged, and desire to give it what it wants, and so on. So Lama Tsongkhapa will go into more detail in the next verses. But so the reason we need to develop this right view is because without that we cannot get out of samsara. All the other delusions we cannot eliminate as long as we have this wrong view. And then verse 10, showing the right view, the correct view. So last verse it said why we need this correct view, and now Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining how we what is the right view. One who sees the cause and effect of all phenomena, of both cyclic existence and the state beyond sorrow, as forever unbetraying, and for whom any object trusted in by the grasping mind has completely disappeared, has at that time entered the path pleasing the Buddhas. So the path pleasing to the Buddhas, that's the path to enlightenment. And if we have generated Bodhicitta, then we are on the Mahayana path. And the path is a combination of wisdom and compassion. So we already talked about the compassion side, and now we need the wisdom side to combine the two And that's like that we can travel the path to enlightenment. And the cause and effect of all phenomena of both cyclic existence and the state beyond sorrow are forever arbitrary. So everything is cause and effect. Everything so how to explain? When we look at things, they appear to exist just from their own side. And but actually things don't exist by itself. Things exist through causes and conditions. And here it says samsara and nirvana. So everything in samsara is created by causes and conditions. And even beyond the state beyond sorrow, which is liberation, is also a state which is generated through causes and conditions, like nirvana and Buddhahood, enlightenment, is not a state which exists by its own. The Buddha has created the causes to become a Buddha. So it's not a state which it's just there. It depends on causes. And like that, now we can create the causes to become a Buddha. So if Buddhahood would be something, if a Buddha would be something just existing from its own side, there would be no way for us to become a Buddha. It's only because our current state as a human is also a state which is ever changing, and that we have this state of a human in whatever form we are, as whatever, a Swiss, a male, a female, or whatever. It's due to causes and conditions. We were born. We and also like there's different causes. There's like main causes and conditions, and some of the causes are karmic causes, like the actions we created in past lives. But then there's also just a cause that my parents, they came together, and then my mother became pregnant, and I was born, and there were no problems, and I'm still alive, and all these causes, the food I had, and there are many causes for us to have this body and this mind in this way, and it can change. And if our mind has delusions, we have tendency to get angry or excited, or any states of mind which are not happy states of mind. They're also caused, and they can change. So things are not fixed, and even the state of the world, whatever the political situation, the situation with the environment, things can change. They can change to become better. They can become worse, and it all depends on other causes. And here there's different causes, like Lama Tsongkhapa talks about dependent arising, and there's different types of dependent arising, and different subtleties also of dependent arising. And one is the dependent arising of just cause and effect, like is explained with the cause for a tree is the seed. So the seed is the cause for a tree to grow, but it's not the only cause. Just to have a seed doesn't mean you get a tree. The seed, it needs moisture, it needs fertile ground, it needs to be warm, not too cold. There's all these causes. It's like sometimes they call them secondary causes. Like the seed, we can say, is the main cause for, let's say, an apple tree. We need an apple seed, so that seed. But then, yeah, there's all the other conditions which need to be there so the seed can grow. And so this is quite understandable. And same for to build a house, we also have causes. We need the land, we need the building materials, we need the architect. In Switzerland you need a building permission, you need the people who build it, and all these causes must come together. Somebody needs to have the money to pay for it, and if all these causes come together, then you have a house. But once the house is built, it seems there's a house, and when we look at a house, we don't see causes. We just see a house, and it seems it was there forever, even though we know somebody has built it, but we don't naturally see. When I look at a cup, I don't see causes and conditions which create this cup. It just appears as if there's a cup from its own side. And so we have to familiarize ourselves with the idea that things don't exist just like that everything has causes. And one of the causes for the cup is the material it's made of, porcelain. I don't know what porcelain is made of. Lime? I think, yeah, it's type of lime. Mud. Yeah, it's
a kaolin.
kind of clay, yes. So, it's hard to say. You see that it's actually clay, but it's a special type of clay, and then it was fired, I think, at a higher temperature, and then some, I don't know, chemical reaction happens and whatever, and then it's the decoration. So there's all these causes, and if I'm aware of the causes, then I can see earth here, but I don't see earth. I don't see the work of the pot. Oh, it's probably made in a factory. I don't know how many people worked on it nowadays, but let's say it's a handmade cup. There would be a person, a potter, and then it was fired, and but even the factory, somebody must build the machines and the electricity, and then it's transported, and so all these conditions. But usually we know intellectually, but at the moment we're not. We have to make effort to think about, otherwise we don't see it. And when we drink clean water, which comes from the tap, we don't see all the conditions which are necessary for us to have clean water. There's a lot of people working and making sure it's clean and having built the system, but it's only when it doesn't work then we notice it. But this is like ordinary cause and condition, the more easy to understand. And that's one type of causality, let's say, which is already intellectually we know, but normally we're not aware. But the other one is existing independence. Like, for example, big and small, like when I say, oh, this is a big cup. I cannot say it's a big cup because it's only one, but if I have a smaller one next to it, then I can say, oh, this is the big cup. Yeah, I take the big cup. But if there's a bigger one, then this becomes a small cup. So if it's big or small depends if there's a bigger or a smaller one to compare with. So then it exists in relation to something else, big and small, hot and cold, fast and nice and ugly, if it's a nice cup, well, it also depends on my projection. So it's dependent on other things. Or like you say, the right side is there, for you the right side is there. And the back side of the house is, the back side of the cup is here for me, but for you it's the front side. So it's all, but I only see my side, but then to see that it's just in relation to something else. Or sometimes people say, oh, there's poor people in Switzerland. But when I've been to India, I think there's no poor people in Switzerland. Because compared to the poor people in India, they're still rich. Because they're not, I mean, but they're poor compared to, because they don't have enough to pay the rent, but they're still not starving compared to some poor people somewhere else. So it's always poor in relation to the living standard we have in Switzerland, which in another country, even the poor people here are still relatively well off, which doesn't mean that they're not suffering, but so it's all always relative. And when I feel I don't have enough, or yeah, it's not good enough, then it's always depending on what I'm used to. But then it's also sometimes good to think about how much do others have, and so it's all in relation. And because in relation, we can also change it when we change our attitude of what is good enough, what is actually enough, what is yes. And that the first type of dependent arising, this is only for impermanent objects. But then we also have permanent things. And also permanent objects, they are dependent. And the lower schools, which explain dependent arising, like the seed and the sprout, this only works because one thing comes from the other. For like the cup and so on, because a cup is impermanent, it's changing moment by moment, and eventually it can break and disappear. But there are a few in the Buddhist philosophy, some permanent objects, and the main example is like space is a permanent object. But then also permanent objects, they're supposed to be dependent arising, and that's not possible to explain with this example of the seed and the sprout. But the example of depending on the relation of others, this we can also apply to permanent objects. I don't have an example in mind right now, but anyway, that's what it says. So this is a bit more subtle explanation of impermanence. And then the third one is the most subtle one, which is the one Lama Tsongkhapa is actually talking about here, is the prasangika view of dependent arising, which is depending on what to say, depending on the label, on the name, on our yeah, we have a base, and on the base we give it a name and a concept, kind of like the cup. We need a base, and then on that we call it a cup, and then because I have a concept of cup basically, and then I see the object, and then I can apply this concept of cup, and the main thing when we think about the dependent arising is to apply it to our own self in the end. So then, verse 11, the definition of not having completed the analysis of the right view. If the appearance of dependent relation, which is unbetraying, is accepted separately from emptiness, and as long as they are seen as separate, then one has still not realized the Buddha's intent. So here is Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining it from the point of view of dependent arising. And one thing is the dependent arising, and the other one is the emptiness of the objects. And they're not, Lama Tsongkhapa tries to explain how they're not contradictory. And so that's the challenge, to see them as not contradictory. It's about, in our normal view, we easily fall into the extreme of eternalism or nihilism. So normally when we look at an object, we think the object exists there, and then I'm looking at the object, which is existing out there from its own side, and because it's there, I perceive it as it is, and I'm not doing anything. I'm completely objective. So this is the view of eternalism. This exists there, and I am here, and I just interact, and I see it because it exists from its own side. So, and this is a materialistic view, we could say, or the eternalist view. And the other extreme would be the nihilist view, which is then we meditate on emptiness, and we think like, oh, the pot doesn't exist from its own side. And then we think, oh, if it's not existing from its own side, it doesn't exist at all. So because we have this materialistic view that we believe things exist from their own side, and then we meditate on emptiness, where in the text it says things don't exist from their own side. Think, oh, if they don't exist from their own side, then they don't exist. And which is, both are wrong views. And because we have one wrong view, and then we try to meditate on emptiness, and then we fall on the other wrong view. And here the Prasanghya view is the view of the middle way, where we don't fall into these two extremes. And it's way beyond my capacity to explain it, but just to have some general idea. And this is something which needs a lot of study, contemplation, and meditation. And I'm trying to repeat what I hear, and hope it's useful. But yeah, so maybe we can look at the text, maybe it becomes more clear. Here it says, we're still on verse 11. If the appearance of dependent relation, which is unbetraying, is accepted separately from emptiness, and as long as they are seen as separate, then one has still not realized the Buddha's intent. So with verse 10, one starts to meditate on the emptiness and seeing things as being dependent objects which exist in dependence, like these different three types of dependence. And we can use all three depending on the object and depending on how deep we want to go. And it's even the first most gross one with the seed and the sprout. If we're familiar with that, we're already way ahead of our normal thing of seeing it. But even then, in the meditation, we might think like, oh yes, everything is dependent, and it can. But then, when we stop the meditation and we walk around, things again appear from their own side, and one thing is like, yeah, object like a cup, but then there's also things which only appear, like the more subtle one, appear in. It's more an agreement, kind of. We agree on the concept of cup, like there's a definition of the cup. A cup is something which is hollow, and you can put liquid in, and it stays, and you can drink from it. And so we all have this agreed that's what a cup is. And if it's long and narrow, then we call it a bottle and not a cup, even it has a similar function. And yeah, and then we have the concept and we apply it. But then where with the cup, yeah, it's one thing. But then there's other things where for example, we can say Switzerland. So, of course, Switzerland exists, there's no doubt. But then we try to see, okay, so where is it? Or it's here, you know. Can you show me where is Switzerland? Anyone? Is here? There? It's here everywhere, but when we want to point it out, yeah, there's houses, there's trees, there's mountains, there's lakes. Are the lakes Switzerland? Are the mountains? Yeah, the mountains are Switzerland. Or the chocolate, maybe. Or I don't know. Or you can say, oh, it's the government. The government is not Switzerland. Maybe it's the people. I'm not Switzerland. I'm Swiss. But yeah. So, and then in the end, you can say, oh, it's the border. You can find it on the map, but on the map it's just a piece of paper, and the border is just somebody decided that here is Switzerland and there is Italy and there is France. But it's basically Switzerland is nothing but an idea. And everybody who believes in the idea, and there's an agreement, and that makes Switzerland. And then we talk about Switzerland as if it's a real existing country, which it is, but it's not existing from its own side. It's just existing because it exists in our mind and in the mind of others. And when we talk about Switzerland, we have some common idea what it is. And yeah, when I'm in France, I go to Switzerland, people know I go to this country there with the mountains and the lakes and the chocolate. And yeah, it's useful. But then, yeah, when you try to be really precise, you cannot found it, except as a concept, as an idea. And even we think Switzerland, oh, it looks like permanent, but it has always changed. And I saw in history they tell you that was founded, for 12, yeah, 1261. That's when it started. And from then on, there was Switzerland. But then, it was a few people that came together and they And even some of the canton, they only joined 100 or 200 years ago. So they were not part of, like Switzerland was not the same 300 years ago. And even the constitution and the idea of what Switzerland is has changed over the years. But when I talk about Switzerland, it seems so something solid. And this is constantly changing, and it will be changing depending on what we project. So it's basically a projection of something which we have in common. So there's an agreement, and to see it like that is more realistic than some. That's where nationalism comes, because this is our country and all these things, and then we need to protect it from the foreigners who try to take over, and then hatred and war, and we need an army to protect it, and all these things come because it's nothing solid, but we think it's solid, and then we need to protect it. But nobody can take away Switzerland. I mean, the lakes and the mountains will stay, and maybe another army can come that can take our freedom or our money or some things. But yeah, it's not so solid, and that's why also there's all the fear coming, because we cling to something as if it's really existing, but actually it's something very fragile and just an idea, an agreement, which is still a good idea and a good agreement, and it works. And we can make sure it continues if it's useful, or make it better, because it can change. Not everything is perfect, but some things are quite good. So we can keep the good things and improve the things which could be better. And that's why, because it's not solidly existing, we can improve it. We can have in Switzerland, we can have a referendum and vote for something, and then things might get better or worse, depending on yeah. And same, like, money is also a good example for things which actually don't exist, but we believe as it's something real. And yeah, it's quite interesting when we work, and then we earn some money, and yeah, it's something because we can use it and buy things. So it has a real value, but actually it's just an agreement on a piece of paper, and as long as everybody agrees that it has a certain value, it actually has a value, and the value is only an agreement. If I have 5 Swiss francs, I can buy a piece of bread or a cup of coffee, because the restaurant owner agrees that it has a certain value, and he can pay the wages for his employees, and so it works. But as soon as, if people would not trust the banks and the government anymore, it will be useless. And it happens sometimes, and happened before, and it will probably happen again. And that's why the value goes up and down. And but when somebody gives me 100 Swiss francs, and oh wow, so generous, so nice. Now I have more money, and but it immediately comes, it's something, and it is, because it's useful, but it's still just a projection. Like, I'm projecting this value of 100 Swiss franc, which is the value of, I don't know, what can I get for 100 Swiss francs? The value of, I don't know, a train journey to Geneva and back. So that's the value of 100 Swiss francs, or maybe more, I don't know, but something like that. And yeah, it works, but there's no inherent value in the money. And now we still have paper, but then actually, yeah, even the bank, if you have money on your bank account, the banks don't even have so much paper. It's just numbers in the economy. And some people say it's the gold which the national bank has, but they don't have much gold compared to the money which is around. So if everybody thinks I want to take, I don't trust the banks, I want my money in gold, there's not enough gold. And if you say, okay, give me paper money, they don't even have enough money printed to pay all the money which we're using. So it's not even existing in gold or in paper, not even the paper. It's just numbers on computers. Before you still had a little booklet for your bank account and it was handwritten. And now it's not even that. Now it's just on your banking app or whatever, you have some numbers. And it works, but actually there's nothing there. So it's completely empty of any inherent value or existence, but still it functions. So that's the thing. It's empty, but then the nihilism would say like, oh, because it's empty, the money there's no inherent value, then it's useless. But it's not useless because it still has a value, but the value is only imputed. I impute the value on a piece of paper, on the numbers on my bank account, and when I use it, the other people impute the same value. But like when I was in India one time, Modi, he did something weird with money, and from one day to the other, the money was, he changed the new bills, and the old ones, they could not be used anymore. And only if you had a bank account and if you had to declare your money, you could change the old bills for the new ones. And because I think there was a lot of corruption and a lot of people had money which was not declared at the bank. So if somebody had a lot of money but only a certain amount declared on a bank account, he could only change that amount for the new bills and the other. And then suddenly I had some few thousand Indian rupees and nobody wanted it. And I could not exchange it at the bank because I was not an Indian citizen. I didn't have a bank account and nothing. And then it became useless. It's from one day to the other. And yeah, so it just one decision in the government and things changed. The agreement has changed, and nobody. If you go to shop with the old bills, people say, "No, I need the new one." Nobody wanted it. That shows it's depending on our imputation, and that is a more subtle view on emptiness. And also about myself, who am I? I have a certain idea who I am based on what people tell me or what I tell myself and say, oh, I'm a monk. I mean, uh, yes, because I took ordination and so on. But then the idea of me as a monk, or at one moment I can think, oh, I'm a monk. But then when I'm in India, I can think, oh, I'm Swiss, or I'm a male, or I'm uh, grown up. I'm a child. I'm this. I'm that, and it might change. I'm happy. I'm unhappy. I'm rich. I'm poor, and it's all things we identify with, which is not really what we are. It's just like concepts, labels we put on ourselves based on projections by ourselves, projection by others, and uh, yeah, so it's not fixed, it's not solid, it's not from its own side. Um, so then, yeah, let's go to verse 12. The definition of having completed the analysis of right view. If these two realizations are happening simultaneously without alternation, and from merely seeing dependent relation as completely unbetraying, the definite ascertainment comes that completely destroys the way all objects are apprehended as truly existent. At that time, the analysis of the ultimate view is complete. So here we have the two realizations. The two realizations are the realization of things exist in independence on each other, like the dependent arising, and the other realization is the realization of emptiness. I mean, emptiness always means empty of inherent existence. And we can meditate on one or the other. And in the beginning, it might seem contradictory, but actually it's explained as if it's like two coins, two sides of one coin, which are not contradictory. But when we look at one side, we see one thing, but on the other side, if we flip it, it's not something different. It's just a different way of seeing the same thing. And then in verse 12, it's like not seeing them as contradictory anymore. It's like the more we understand dependent arising, the more we also understand emptiness in a correct way. And when we only meditate on emptiness, it's very easy to fall into a state of nihilism, that we negate too much. Like we have the object, sometimes we meditate on the I, the self, and then we try to find it, or this is meditation. Where's the I? We try to find it, and then we cannot find it. Or like Switzerland, maybe easier. Where is Switzerland? We cannot find it. It's not here. It's not there. It's not the people. It's not the government. And then we say, oh, Switzerland doesn't exist, and which is completely wrong, because it functions as a country. But when we look for it, there's nothing we can actually point out and hold on and say, the cup, we can still say, yes, here, I can hold it. But still, that's not what the cup is. The cup is also my view of the cup and my projection. But with something more subtle, like the counter, or like the money, it becomes more clear that it's not something we can grasp. The money, you can say it's the paper, but it's not the paper. It's the value, and there's nothing to hold on to. But then we realize that, and then say, oh, in that case, it doesn't exist. But then we fall into the extreme of nihilism, which, yeah, then when we think about Switzerland, then we can see that that's not how it exists, because it doesn't exist from its own side. It's not solid and independent, but still it functions. And same with the self, with the I. The I doesn't exist independent of the body. It doesn't exist independent of the mind, even though it seems to appear like that. Just like Switzerland seems to appear as something. It's just there. When we don't analyze, then we analyze and think, no, it doesn't exist like that. And then we think, oh, in that case, it doesn't exist, which is wrong. So then, not to fall into this nihilistic view, we have to meditate on the dependent arising to see, okay, Switzerland is depending on the people and the land and the government and the constitution and everything together as something which functions, or as an agreement, and people believing in that it actually exists. And in this sense, it still functions. So that's a more realistic view of things. And then to see the dependent existence of a thing, whether it's a country or the money or the cup or myself, and the emptiness of it, which is the emptiness, the absence of a solid, inherently existing thing, that these two are not contradictory. So this is, and if we have reached this non-contradiction and can see them at the same time, then we have the right view. And then verse 13, once we have that, the particular special quality of the prasangika view. Furthermore, appearances eliminate the extreme of existence, and emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. If you realize how emptiness manifests in the manner of cause and effect, then you are not captivated by wrong notions holding extreme views. So this is another way of pointing that out. So this is when I read this verse in the past, I thought this doesn't make any sense. It's the other way around, because normally when we meditate on when we see things, we see them as existing from their own side. Then we meditate on emptiness and we think, oh, they don't exist from their own side. But here, Lama Tsongkhapa just using it in the opposite way, from the way of once you have realized that things are emptiness and dependent arising are not contradictory, actually one enhances the other. So here it says that the appearance eliminates the extreme of existence. So the appearance of the cup eliminates the extreme of it existing inherently, which is normally the appearance reinforces the extreme of existence. But here, because appearance, when we're completely familiarized with, when we see something appearing, we immediately think it appears because it's dependent. And because it's dependent, it's not independent, and like that, it's an antidote to the wrong view of existence, which takes time to be able to see it like that. And then the other thing, and emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence, because usually when we meditate on the emptiness of the pot, then we think, oh, it's empty, so it doesn't exist. But this is actually the wrong way of meditating on it. But when we meditate correctly on emptiness, then it eliminates the extreme of non-existence, because when we meditate on emptiness, which means it's empty, therefore it exists as a dependent arising. And if it's a dependent arising, it eliminates the extreme of non-existence. Like Switzerland, it exists as a dependent arising thing. Therefore, it does exist, even though when we meditate on it, there's nothing we can grasp as it solidly. So this is the special quality of the Prasangika view, on the philosophical views, the most subtle. If you realize how emptiness manifests in a manner of cause and effect, then you're not captivated by wrong notions holding extreme views. So like that, we are free from the extreme view of nihilism, that things don't exist at all, or the view of materialism, which we're normally in when we don't meditate. And even, if you're not really familiar, we might understand this when we think about it, but then in normal life, we often fall back to it's just habits. But that's why it needs understanding and familiarization and study, and to get deeper, and also especially this topic is good to listen to, like, teachers who really, like His Holiness or Lama Zopa, how he explains emptiness is just amazing. So then, this is the part of emptiness and dependent arising. And then the last verse is how to practice once we have developed these three: renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. Having gained definite ascertainment, advise on pursuing the practice. In this way, you realize exactly the vital points of the three principal aspects of the path. Resort to seeking solitude, generate the power of effort, and quickly accomplish your final goal, my child. So here Lama Tsongkhapa, he's advising his disciple to, after he has understood these 3 points and realized them, then it's not enough to having a conceptual realization. Like emptiness, first we realize emptiness conceptually. So we actually have realized it, but it's still a conceptual realization. And then I think it talks about the power of effort. I think here it means I don't know, effort. But anyway, you need to combine the realization of emptiness with calm abiding, like complete concentration. And then with single-pointed concentration, combined with this conceptual realization of emptiness, and then intense meditation with a very clear, calm, and focused mind, which is like the sword of Manjushri, cutting through ignorance. Then with a lot of practice, eventually one will get the direct realization of emptiness. But to achieve that, we need, Lama Tsongkhapa says, the power of effort. We need really strong effort, like joyous effort, and other conditions we need to practice. And like solitude, where we're undisturbed and have all the conditions. And then really resort to meditation, like in the Gelugpa tradition. There's a lot of emphasis on study to get an understanding. But once one has an intellectual understanding, then with all the knowledge and advice of the teacher, and maybe having done some practice of purification, accumulation of merit, then go to solitude and then complete the path to enlightenment, like the different Mahayana paths. Reach the final goal, enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's it. So now maybe we're going a bit over time, but maybe if you have a few questions.
Yes, you think we can- He talked about nirvana and the state of nirvana and the causes and effect. And just wanted to ask whether it's possible to go in and out of the state of nirvana based on causes and effect, or you stay permanently in nirvana, even though nirvana changes as well as it's not, it's permanent but impermanent in a way. But is it possible to go out of state of nirvana or go temporarily or stay, like, out of chaos?
So the question is about nirvana and if it's possible to go in and out of a state of nirvana, or if once we reach it, if it's kind of permanent. Yeah, from my understanding, I think also nirvana, that's different. Sometimes the words in depending on the context, like there's the nirvana is a state beyond samsara, which can be the nirvana of personal liberation, because it's a state beyond samsara, but also then there's the state of full enlightenment, which is much higher, but this is also nirvana because it's also out of samsara. So once if we have reached the nirvana of personal liberation, we still haven't finished the path to enlightenment. But as far as I understand, once you reach nirvana, or even before, there's like a time where you will not fall back into samsara. I think it's even before you become an arhat. But it still means you haven't completed the path. Like sometimes people stay in the state of nirvana for a long time, but eventually, if they're on the Hinayana path, they will realize that they need to go further to help all sentient beings. There's still sentient beings suffering. And then they have to make effort again to generate the bodhicitta motivation, enter the Mahayana path, and then purify the most subtle defilements and become a Buddha, and having the state of a Buddha where they have the capacity to benefit beings in a much broader way. But I don't think they go back out of some of nirvana. But sometimes, like a bodhisattva, he comes, he gets reborn in samsara, like, Dalai Lama, we can say he's a Buddha, but he's out of his compassion, he manifests. But he's here in the samsaric world, but actually because nirvana is a state of mind, he's still in nirvana, even he manifests here, but we cannot say he's in some. Sometimes they say the bodhisattva, he stays in samsara, but actually the bodhisattva, he's in nirvana, he just manifests in samsara to help sentient beings, but his mind will not go back to a samsaric mind.
So the causes and effect is like to go higher stages and not go back within a nirvana state.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
They even say that, I hear that there's some mention that nirvana is permanent, which it's also based on cause and effect. So in order to reach nirvana, it needs a lot of causes. But once you reach nirvana, they say it's permanent. I don't know how that is really explained, but I think it's because it's not, you cannot lose it anymore. And it's not changing again because it's ultimate. But it's something I just hear and I cannot really explain. But if in some way it's one example of something which is permanent. Nirvana is permanent, but yeah, it needs to be understood in a certain way, which I cannot really explain.
It's because it's an absence of suffering, so it's not. It does not have a substantial cause. It's just the absence of something. So it's the emptiness of, or like the not being there of suffering, and so this is permanent, I think.
Yes, something like that. Yes. So, yeah, it needs to be understood in the right way, but that's what it says. Yes.
Like if you have actually reached nirvana, you've had to learn so many things that you will not then unlearn. And that is why you wouldn't go back to samsara, because you have learned these things, you have attained this understanding, which you wouldn't unlearn.
Yes, so it's that nirvana is a state where you've learned things which you will not lose again, you will not unlearn. Not, yes, not like normal things. We learn something, we reach some, and then we forget it again, and we can fall back. But these things, because it's the delusions, they're eliminated, and in a permanent way, they're permanently eliminated, and they will not come back anymore because they're cut from the root. So
That's I kind of felt like it's what it sounds like.
yes,
That you've had to work so hard to get there and to cross all these hurdles that you have left them behind you. You're not going to go back there, are you?
yeah. Also, the causes, because everything is based on causes, like the karmic causes for us to be reborn in samsara. These causes are not there anymore. It's not that the karma is not there anymore, but the karma cannot ripen because the wrong views are not there, and the delusions are not in the mind, so the karma cannot ripen, and the delusions are permanently eliminated from the mind, and there's no negative karma to be ripened, and then like that, in that sense, it's once you reach nirvana, it's forever. So that's nice. Yes. So there's no more questions. We can.
I just have one suggestion.
Okay.
It's more of a debate
yes.
question. We probably won't get anywhere with it. Space is permanent, but space is not unchanging because we move things around in space, and so the space changes. That's just one thing that went through my head the other night.
No, this is not a space. What is inside the space is not a space. Space is.
Oh yes, of course. Thank you. Okay, that was short and sweet.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, also when I say there was a what to say, space is permanent, but it can still change, and when I say permanent, it means it's not changing moment by moment. That's the definition of permanence in Buddhism. And like the space inside the cup will change when I put something in, like the empty space is gone, but they say the space itself is not changing moment by moment. But still, the space in this room changes when we put furniture in, but the space itself. So it's like philosophical debates, which
So the eastern space and the western space, and the north space and south space. So those are relative. That's the spaces.
Up and down.
No, yeah. But yeah.
yeah. Good. So thank you very much for your attention. And then we can dedicate. So we can go to page 30 of the prayer book. And then afterwards, for those who have the prayers for the swift return of Lama Zopa, maybe you have it on your device or somewhere, we can do the first one, the prayer by His Holiness Dalai Lama afterwards. The booklet and separate booklet on page 5. So we can, for a moment, just reflect that we've been fortunate to come here, and either in person or online, and having a group coming together, and this gives a nice energy, and we can learn from each other. And anyway, without the group, I would not be here. And for me also, it helped me to prepare. I probably learned more than all of you, because when you try to explain, you have to. I went through the text again a little bit, so for me it was very, very useful, and also to be here with you, and just to make effort to try to understand this really deep topics is so amazing, and it creates a lot of imprints, a lot of good karma, especially when we do it with a good motivation. And we can deeply rejoice that I think our teachers, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, our teachers, they're very pleased with us making so much effort. Whatever little understanding we get is really amazing, and we can rejoice in that, because this is the seed of enlightenment. This is what the Buddha taught, and this is what our teachers want us to realize, to cut through suffering, find lasting peace, and being able to spread the wisdom and compassion with others, and leading them to peace. And I think, even though we might not be aware, but this is really contributing to peace and well-being in the world, maybe more than other efforts, because all the suffering comes from the mind, and if we work with our mind, also all the peace and the happiness can come from the mind for ourselves and others. So like that, this kind of meetings, reflection, contemplation, meditation is really a contribution to a better world, to a peaceful future for us and for all others. So we can take a moment and rejoice in our common effort. And we can also dedicate all the merit we've created, and we should dedicate it to the highest possible goal. We can dedicate it to our own enlightenment, not just for our own sake, but in order to be able to benefit others. That we dedicate it for us to be able to progress on the path, to stay inspired, have joyous effort, and getting realizations on the path, keeping the Dharma in our heart, and traveling on the path to enlightenment. So like with this motivation, we can read the dedication prayer. We can do it in Tibetan maybe. Changjub sem chog rinpoche ma kye pa nam kye gyurchik kye pa nyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du pelwar sho. And then the long life prayer for His Holiness Dalai Lama. Kangri rave korve shinkam dir pendang dewa malu chungwe ne Chenre Ziguang Tenzin Gyatso Shape Site Partu Tengyurji. And then we can do the prayer for the quick, swift return of Lama Zopa. If you have it, otherwise you can just listen to me. I'm reading it in English. Peerless teacher, assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Prateka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and son, along with the lineage masters, all the object of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue of goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, through explanation and practice, you wrote the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teaching, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for modern living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss! Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of Bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of an incarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
Thank you very much. Thank you.